Welcome to our first episode of 7 Questions With, a new Jobs with Justice video series profiling our awesome network leaders and their organizations. I am your host, Martha Valadez. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm an organizer at National Jobs with Justice. Today, we're speaking to Denise Diaz, whose pronouns are she, her, and Jonathan Alingu, whose pronouns are he, him. And they're both the co-directors, amazing co-directors at Central Florida Jobs with Justice. I want to thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, Martha.
Pleasure to be here.
We're going to start off with a few lighthearted questions just to get to know you on a personal level. And so I hope that they're quite delightful as much as we enjoyed creating them. We hope that you enjoy the questions that we put together for you. So the first question I'm going to ask you, Denise, is and this question is to kind of get at your fighting spirit, sort of your social justice warrior inside you. And so I want to ask you, which wrestler best describes your personality? You know, I'm thinking of terms of like lucha libre and WWE. If you could describe in the terms of your costume or the personality, how would you describe yourself in the form of a wrestler?
Oh my gosh, this is the best question. I would say that it would be The Rock, just because I had a crush on him as a child, but as a young girl, but also just, I would say because he does this thing where he does this thing with just a look, as well as when he has to be very loud and just solid and present. So he gets across the communication with a look, and a look that says, I got this, as well as, just being able to have that whole massive body just there, right there, as a threat. So I don't know. I would see myself as The Rock because I'm pretty solid.
Oh, for sure. Because I was a big wrestling fan when I was younger. So my favorite wrestler is Stone Cold Steve Austin. So I would definitely channel him, just because, I don't know, he was so tough. He was such a bad person. So, and like he was a little bit anti-establishment. So, like he would like just do a lot of things, like just really make the corporation mad. So, I would definitely relate to him. And he's just a nice person off camera too. So, Stone Cold.
Stone Cold and rebellious too. I like that. Thank you both for that the visual. I appreciate that. My next question is more about how you describe your coalition, Central Florida Jobs with Justice. So if you had to describe it in the form of a dish, like an entree, something that you would be serving someone, right? What would you describe it as? And Jonathan, we'll switch it to you to go first.
Wow, that's a very good one too. It's like, for me, if I can compare it to anything, it's like going to a restaurant, like a restaurant that serves tacos, whereas you can choose as many options as you want to put on a taco. Or you can have a different type of protein if you want. I think that most symbolizes the coalition for me, because we have multiple different groups, multiple different personalities, multiple different experiences. And, with the talk, it will all taste good no matter what you do. So I think working with groups, it doesn't matter who you work with. You're going to move things one way or the other, and then you'll feel good about it. So I think that's what I would compare it to, taco.
Well, to these tacos, I would say that our coalition brings all the seasonings. right, together that on their own are distinct and they're great, but to then complement it with other distinct seasonings and flavors, you're like, wow, this only gets better and more flavorful. So I would say that the deliciousness of like our coalition is in the seasoning of what each group, each individual brings to it, whether it's spicy or sweet, and they all really like complement each other.
Yeah. Okay, what a delight. Sounds delicious. Sounds like I want to be at that table with you when you serve that dish. I really appreciate y'all giving us that visual. Now we're going to get into some movement questions in a second. And so this is kind of a question related to movement. So what song do you have on repeat on your phone? If someone came and took your phone and they saw what you were listening to, that it was maybe even something a little shameful, like that brings you joy, right? No shame. But what is that song that's on repeat on your playlist? Or what is the song that really gets you moving and excited in the day, right? What is that song? And Denise, I'll ask you first.
Oh, wow. Well, I would say Bad Bunny, and definitely even the most trap style song of Bad Bunny, you still feel a level of joy. So honestly, on repeat, constantly in the car, in the house, any point, it's Bad Bunny song, and you're gonna feel joy. You're also gonna feel like I listen to what I want, and you might not want it playing with your mom around. So Bad Bunny just is my movement kind of artist right now.
I like the question because I feel like it would be very embarrassing if you took my phone right now, because there's two songs. The one I'm thinking about, the ones I'm gonna repeat right now, is DeBarge, "Stay With Me," which is, it was sampled for "One More Chance" by Biggie, and more relevant Ashanti. If maybe that's more more later millennial. So Ashanti's "Foolish" too. So I'm a very mellow person at almost all times. So I listen to that song all the time. Like for the last 2 weeks, just going up and down wherever I'm doing. Just all right, time to do some work. We play some DeBarge, "Stay With Me." I love just the sound of it all. So it would be that one for sure. And secondary right now, somehow Doja Cat is like in my head, like in my psyche for the last like few months. So the song she has with SZA, "Kiss Me More," another one that just like, okay, I can just vibe to this and listen to this all day.
Okay, so those are really good. Thank you for giving them more mainstream, because the deep hip hop, I don't know. I'm a poser on that end. But very much appreciate those two. Okay, so now we're going to go into a little bit about yourself in terms of movement. I think it's important for folks to know a little, right? We see you in the day-to-day in your leadership role, right? So it's helpful for us to kind of understand, share a little bit more about yourself, how you arrived in this position and in this leadership role in your organization. So yeah, if you can share how you first got involved in movement space, wherever your mind takes you, what was the first sort of a memorable moment that really like you arrived and you're like, this is informed, right? Like this is gonna be your trajectory of your life and movement work.
I think for me, a memorable moment, and I tell to people sometimes very often, is I never knew so I grew up in the Bahamas before I moved to Florida, and my mom, she worked as like what would you consider a guidance counselor, but her role was like with like a student who was doing poorly in class, like she would actually do like house visits and see what's going on, like figure out ways to help, encourage the student to do better, and there she experienced a lot of people were in poverty. A lot of people suffered from abuse, like students suffer from abuse at home. And just all the things, again, with poverty, all the things that are connected to that and what people's frustrations come out of it. Students experience it just as much as like the parents do. And so I never knew she did that. I just knew what like a guidance counselor was. Like, oh, you're sad. Tell me why. Da, 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 da. And that's it. All right, go back to your school. Go back to your class. So I think I was wanting to get involved in things, but I didn't really feel a motivation to when I was younger until, and this, I mean, I was like 20 years old when I found out what my mom did. And so after that moment, I was just like, I need to get involved some way, somehow, some shape or form in any type of movement work. I didn't really know what that was until I was in school and I became, like, I went to the University of Central Florida and I joined a student group, which is a project of Jobs with Justice and the United States Student Association Student Labor Action Project. So that was really the moment for me, if I can pick a defining moment where I just really wanted to get involved and support the work.
There's so many, and I'm thinking between when I found my movement home, which is Jobs with Justice, and then when I wanted to come to the movement. I would say, and I don't know if many people know this about me, but I was a poli-sci undergrad, went abroad to Australia right after the United States had invaded Afghanistan, and that whole war started. And I was doing an internship in Australia, and that was a big deal for my family because we all had to like save money to get me to go study abroad. It was like a big deal. My family was really proud. And so I went abroad. I did an internship, I guess, with a local elected official. And he was visiting one of his constituents, which was a nonprofit that was in refugee nonprofit. And so they helped refugees resettle right in the country. And at that time, there was this big debate about so many refugees coming from Afghanistan. And I remember some new folks had come in, and I was introduced to them. And there was this Afghanistan man who had lost his whole family, and in his migration to Australia, but also because of the invasion. And so here I was being introduced as the American intern, right? And at that moment, my heart had dropped, right? Because in that moment, I recognized and realized and internalized what U.S. policy, foreign policy, like what that actually means to the rest of the world, and how, as you know, at that moment, I am my country, right? And so, you know, that was a really powerful moment for me that really motivated me to come back and just get involved in exactly that, like how do I make my country better in a way that, you know, reflects my values and just like being more a part of this collective global just resistance, right? So that was a really powerful moment for me. And yeah, that's when I came back and started getting involved, honestly, in immigrant rights movements locally in Chicago, and then later on outside of DC.
I love that. And y'all have been in this work for some time. And so just remembering to look back on where we started from is also helpful, I'm sure, for you both. So thank you. Thank you for that. So the next question is something more about trying to get at a little bit more. Like we know you do a lot in Central Florida with Jobs with Justice, and we know there's a lot of issues you work on. You touched on maybe a little bit based on your your origins of your own personal story of when you started, but can you share some about the issues that you're most passionate about personally, that you have found yourself most aligned or connected to? Not necessarily we'll get to what you're doing in Central Florida, but if you can share a little bit about like what issues are you most passionate about since your trajectory, right, has evolved in your work and in your practice. What are issues that maybe some folks don't know that you're really passionate about that you might want to share?
I am very passionate about, advancing Black liberation, and the work of Black liberation, and in service to that, and particularly within the Latinx community. I identify as a Black Latina, and so for me, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And then obviously in Central Florida, it has really helped me connect to my Puerto Rican identity in a way of just like politically, the independence and decolonizing Puerto Ricans, right, and the sovereignty of that. So that has been some passions for me that have really come through being in Central Florida, doing the work there.
Yeah, I don't think I differ from Denise's answer too much either. I think there's a sense for me around Black liberation and how it is plugged into all of our campaigns and all of our issues that we do. And, as I said before, I grew up in the Bahamas, so I see a lot of the connections there. I mean, also my parents, they immigrated to the Bahamas from Uganda, so I'm also connected to the African continent very strongly as well. So I think learning and understanding where folks are like how me being in the United States is connected to what's happening in these other places and what impact they have is something that really drives me to actually stay motivated in the work a lot. If anything fails, I just feel totally defeated. I know that the people that depend on me in these other places, and they look to me, they see the work that I do, and they always have questions around it. They're always like, oh yeah, we need you to come back and do this. So those are the things that just keeps me motivated all the time and keeps me passionate, because there's always something new that comes up that keeps me I never feel a sense of pessimism. I'm always optimistic about it. Sometimes defeated about some things, but never down where I'm like in despair.
Yes, and it's just so important to remember like our heritage, our roots, our land, all really is important to stay connected to, and like it's a beautiful like resource of power and healing, right? And so yes, I think that's really, really beautiful and important to like highlight on who you are and what makes you you and what keeps you going, right? Okay, so now we want to know a little bit about Central Florida Jobs with Justice. We know you do many things, many superpowers. You do work on climate, you do work on construction, you do many things. But so how do y'all balance this? Like, what is the superpower? What is the thing that's like, well, what's your superpower, how to keep this going, to fuel it, but also like, what is the shining light right now that you want people to know about in your work?
I think part of what you'll find at Central Florida Jobs with Justice is that all of, I would say, we take the hard route, and certainly are learning how to take, and have learned to take big risks, and to really be open about experimenting. And learn some lessons from good fights, right? So that's kind of like the culture. But then also I think the ability to have joy in hard work, right? To know that the people you're working with, there are deep connections. Really just like the work is hard. And so therefore, how do we build upon each other's strengths and be, in solidarity with each other. So I think the joy of that is kind of in the special sauce. And I would say John's superpower is that, he really is just a great listener and has real good just discernment and building relationships in a way that people really trust him, trust his leadership, but also like trust that he's also like, showing up for you and going to support your leadership. And that really helps people, take on these fights and struggles. Great.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I oftentimes answer it so simply is that one, I think we're rooted in a sense of friendship and solidarity in that end. And not just friendship like, we're hanging out after and stuff like that, but like the things that we do, the people that we work with, there's a sense of like, yeah, it's not just about the transactional, I do this, you do this, but it's much deeper than that. We see, as you heard, like how what we're passionate about, like that extends into everything that we do. So I think there's a level of that and a level of like it's not just performing solidarity, it's actually feeling like rooted in that, grounded in that too. So I think that's one piece. And I think, just being nice people, I think that's sometimes not, you don't think about it. It's just like you take it for granted, but being nice helps because there are a lot of not nice people in the world, and you can tell right away who you can work with or you can't based off of that. So I think for me it's those pieces, and I would say for Denise, I think what is a superpower for her at Magic is like a lot of people don't feel. When it comes time to take action, a lot of people really don't feel comfortable doing that. But I think Denise is very, very upfront about it and very clear about it. And it makes you feel like you have to, you don't have to do it, but you feel like you're pulled to moving on things. Like things are not just going to stay stagnant. You have to actually advance something. Or else somebody else is gonna make that decision for you. So I think superpower thing that Denise holds it together, that she knows the moment where it's time. Okay, we're not waiting around anymore. We actually got to move, and then you move along with it. You feel confident by moving along with it too. So I would say that.
Yeah, just in your actual responses to that reciprocity that you just shared, right? And the importance of just like holding each other and like looking out for each other, right? In every way is really, really powerful, really important relational work, right? So yes, it's a good reference. And it makes sense knowing all the awesome work you do. It's like it takes that internal work, relational work. So. Okay, my last but most important question for both of you is, how does Central Florida Jobs with Justice, radical vision of social justice, connect to the important work you all hope to do in the future? So thinking bigger picture, right? Like your visions that you manifest, that you want to see realized, right? We're often in the day-to-day. So like the day-to-day grind, you all have an ability to create really powerful radical visions for the future. So how does that, can you share some about that radical vision?
Man, it's hard because you organize people to think about this too, but sometimes you don't think about it as often as you should. So I would say just simply I try to do this work day to day and just struggle with it, because ultimately we want people to feel a sense of they have ownership in their lives and they have ownership around how, at least in this case, Florida, it can move. So like, how are we building I would say a worker democracy in that sense? that really includes the needs of folks that are working class, working poor. Like, how are they actually making the decisions that actually lifts all boats? Rising tides lift all ships, I think is the term. So I think that's critical, because in anything that we do and all the issues that we face here, obviously it's poor folks, Black and brown folks, that suffer the most. So how are they being empowered to have the solutions and not being tokenized? They're actually day to day, they're actually engaging in the process day to day, on an electoral end, on a worker end, on a social, political end. So like they're actually, they actually are a level of comfort, so they can just live their lives in a way that's not, exploiting them to a point where they can't do anything, but they're only working for somebody else. Like, I want folks to feel empowered around that. That they're working for themselves. They feel good about the work that they do, which a lot of people feel they have the joy in the work that they do. So it's just respecting that and honoring that, and building a society that folks feel comfortable within that too. I would say, for one long-term vision that I might have.
And adding to that, I would say, being in the South, they're part of the radical vision is that we have to break the back of Jim Crow, and that has to be a part of our work, our social justice work and movement, and so that's one. And I think one, building off what John's saying, like the interdependence between us all of working people to be able to govern, to be able to rebuild an economy that's regenerative, right? That is not, that is like building up a future, and for those ahead of us, I think, putting that agency for working people to lead that, we are all about. And it's actually, the radical is not radical, and so being able to also have imagination on what would it be like to have all your needs met and all your wants met, similarly as working people. So really expanding that creativity and imagination every single day, in a state like ours can be hard, because you're reminded of real forces of power that don't want you to have that. So, I think, that's the radical vision that is dismantling the things that no longer serve us and rebuilding the things that, we deserve for the future.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And those important historical truths, just like our own personal, powerful stories, right? Those historical truths, they have to be analyzed, critiqued, and assessed, right? To help us inform how we imagine and envision our future. And your work in Central Florida is instrumental. It is powerful. It is something that I admire, and when I get to talk to to one of your colleagues, Chris Farino, and I hear about how the work is moving in education and the resistance work that y'all are doing in that arena, which is a big fight. It's really impressive how you can take sort of like the radical sort of really big picture down to the real everyday life interactions that y'all are working on, and the work that you're really applying and doing, right? Centering workers in the fight and community, leadership in the work is really, really powerful. So Denise and Jonathan, I want to thank you so much for this conversation. And I want to thank you all who are watching for checking out our first episode of 7 Questions With. Please stay tuned for more of these series. I am Martha Valadez, and we'll see you next time.